Welcome to Spirit Baby Radio. I am your host, Kelly Meehan, Spirit Baby Medium, Medical Intuitive, and Mentor. I believe we are entering into a new psychic structure of our reality that embodies deeper trust, self-love, and fearless integrity. Our New World energy needs us all to make space for it, so we can support consciously conceiving parents, true intuitive pregnancies, and trusting the nature of birthing babies upon our lands with co-creation of heart. I thank you personally for tuning into all things spiritual and earth grounding, conversations that support each other and teach us to be open, free, and thrive within autonomous living and with the spark of wisdom. This is Spirit Baby Radio. Welcome to episode 165, May 12th, 2023, Grounding the Cosmic Heart for Supporting Our Children into the Future. How do you support children in today's world? What ways can you facilitate creativity for children? Are you available to heal yourself into open-hearted parenthood? And as always, welcome, welcome. We are in May, and of course, in my part of the world, it's springtime, and I have a special guest. And of course, this is Mother's Day weekend, which is so perfect, talking about children. And it is Sherri. Hello, Sherri. Welcome here.
Hi. Yes, thank you so much for having me on your podcast today.
And so I'm going to read a bit of her bio, but I always feel like how do I meet? How do I connect? Where do my people come from, Spirit Baby Radio? Most people don't ask to come on, and if they do, it's very rare. I feel like I put a really strong energy around who comes into the space, and I get very inspired by, YouTubes or random website, or somebody's like, oh, I don't know what it is, but I was connected through Heidi, and I've been on her podcast show, Airstream or Stream something. Probably not saying it right. And I was like, wow, I need to meet this Sherri. I want her on my podcast because of the work that she's doing. I feel like everybody's going to be like, it feels so progressive to me, and it feels so right. And I even, we're gonna share a little bit more, because I had this vision, like maybe she could bring that to California. I feel like that needs to be here. And so let me share a little bit more about here. Sherri is an intuitive transformational energy healer and founder of Aramis. I say that right? Yes. Aramis Creative Learning Center and the Aramis Collective. She's the author of Intuitive Transformation, Evolution, Divinely Guided, and the Divinely Guided children's books and animated series. Sherri has focused her healing practice on guiding and representing new Earth children to acclimate to the planet's energy field, as well as guiding and coaching parents on how to raise spirited children. Sherri has a passion for teaching children how to explore and understand their spiritual gifts and facilitating the future of education. The Aramis Creative Learning Center was launched in 2020 as a holistic and alternative education platform where children come first. All current classes are virtual and serve 3 time zones: America, Europe, and Australia. The Aramis team is working to raise money to open the first in-person center in Florida in 2023. This will serve to be the foundation for many Aramis centers to come, both nationally and internationally. Yay! Thank you for being here.
Wow, that's a mouthful when you put it all together. Right?
I wanted to say it all. I was like, I got to say it all, because to me, it's like this, we were just talking before behind the scenes, just about education and public education, homeschool, and just and I love the one thing I saw that really popped out in your bio here was, where is it? Let me go back. I love this acclimating to the energy of the earth. And because the energy of the earth is always changing, our consciousness, our connection to everything. And I love that children come first, and we'll start from even there. Children come first. Tell us about your vision and how you created this, and yeah.
Well, the story is quite long, but I'll give you the abbreviated version, if not to bore the audience here. But I have 3 children myself, and I spent a lot of my life as a registered veterinary technician. So essentially that's a nurse for animals. So I worked with animals for over 20 years of my adult career. And so I never really had any focus on adults or children until I had my own children. And that really they were the catalyst of my spiritual awakening, but really my third. So my daughter was born in 2014. And a couple of years before she came into my life, she came to me in a meditation. She came to me as her spirit, and she introduced herself to me and said she would be joining me in this life, and to prepare for her because she has a big journey ahead, and she was asking for my assistance, for my guidance, and she was letting me know ahead of time in my consciousness that she was coming. Obviously, through a higher awareness, we know each other, and I knew she was coming, but she wanted to inform me on a conscious level to let me know that she would be entering our family, and we had a huge journey together. Now, spirit has a way of only telling you what you need to know at one given time, or really what you can handle or what you are prepared for. So I recognize now why, but at the time she didn't explain to me what we would be doing together. And I'm a very impatient person, so I persisted many times. But I never really got an answer. So I really just focused on being a mother to the other two. And every single couple of weeks would go by before I got pregnant, and I would channel her message. She would send me a message. And after a while, I started to recognize that the messages she was sending me were things that I was going to have to get out into the world somehow. And at that time, I didn't have a book or anything like that, and any books really. And I was really shy and introverted. I still am, but I've overcome a lot of it. And so the thought of putting myself out there in the world was quite challenging. And again, in hindsight, that's why they told me every step very slowly to prepare me. So nevertheless, I channeled her quite frequently, and I had journal after journal of her messages. And I would say now, most of the information that I've written in my books, especially having to do with children and the work I do with children, have a lot to do with her teachings. It helped me open my awareness to spirited children, to starseed children. There's lots of different labels that we use, but essentially the children coming to the earth plane during this ascension period to help us evolve. And so what I gravitated towards after she was born which was about a year or a little bit over a year after that. And so what I thought we were going to do together was open a spiritual and metaphysical center for children, because around the time my second son came into my life, I started to open myself up to doing energy healings, not just for animals, but to people. And I started working more with adults. And so after she was born, I started to attract more clients with children. And I also kind of went off into a sidebar direction that I wasn't expecting, where I became a hypnobirthing practitioner. And because I had what I believe to be 3 traumatic births, and they were very challenging for me. And I thought there must be a better way to facilitate the pregnancy and the birth process that we are not being shown. And so hypnobirthing just came into my life unexpectedly, and I became a practitioner, and I worked with hundreds of couples to help them have the natural birth that they always wanted. And through that, I think that's where I also got a lot of parents and children coming into my field of expertise to receive energy healings and things like that. And so I got the question a lot from parents: do you teach? Because I teach Reiki 1, 2, and 3. I teach all sorts of esoteric and metaphysical classes. And they asked me, oh, will you teach my daughter? She's really interested in tarot. Can she learn with me, or can you teach this? And so I started to expand my awareness to, wow, I think children really do well with these things. And my oldest at the time was really into crystals and tarot cards, and he would love to come over to his grandma's house, which was my mom's house, and we would do all sorts of fun activities. And he was there. He was very present for all of that. So he was into it, and I started noticing that a lot of children were really into the metaphysical and the esoteric. So my grand idea was, I'm going to open up a metaphysical center in the area that I lived at the time, which was Bethesda, Maryland, or Rockville, Maryland, rather. And it would be a beautiful center where children could come with their parents, or like a Sunday school type of situation where they come for extracurricular fun and activities where they learn how to do Reiki and animal communication and telepathy and all sorts of really fun things that I thought that's what I was supposed to be doing. Well, then the whole pandemic came and everybody's life was shuffled. I'm not any more unique than anybody else during that period of time. And so what I started to pay more attention to was the education system and how my children were suffering during that period with the virtual learning and various other things, and the inability during a very vulnerable period of time for them to socialize with other children was really difficult. And my children struggled, and I also saw that my children's friends struggled, and my clients' children were suffering. So I started to go out on podcasts to talk about my idea of opening up a spiritual center. And I think that was the catalyst for what I'm doing now, because it got the attention of people not only in Maryland, but worldwide. I mean, literally in every country. I had people contacting me, parents saying, when are you going to open something like this? We'd love to have this in our state, our country. And on top of that, are you going to ever offer any curriculum-based classes? Because I'm frustrated with the school system. I want something more for my children. And then it just blossomed into something way bigger than I had expected, which was an alternative education platform for children, which is where we've kind of morphed into over the last few years, where not only do we offer metaphysical classes for children, like I mentioned, but also really important, valuable foundational classes, such as, what's an energy body? What's the spirit realm? How do you manage your emotions? Why do we have emotions? How can we work through and channel our differences? How do we work together as teams? How to understand astrology and how that relates to our birth chart and our unique qualities and gifts and traits, and all sorts of expanded topics such as that. And it's 100% virtual because I wanted the ability to give as many children that opportunity to take these classes, because there were so many parents asking me to make it available for their children, which is why we offer in Australian time zone, European time zone, and the American time zone. And so, like you mentioned in the intro, the reason my family and I moved to Florida is because this is where we're opening the very first Aramis Creative Learning Center that's an in-person opportunity. But then we will expand not only statewide, but internationally over the next 10 to 15 years.
I love something. So Aramis, that's the names from.
Yes. So a great question. My daughter came to me with the name Lily, and she said that was the name of that she had in another life that we had known each other. But it wasn't until about 6 months into the pregnancy that my husband had a dream, because they're actually very connected on a soul level. Interestingly enough, my daughter and I aren't that connected on a soul level as far as many experiences we've had outside of here, out of this reality. She's more connected to my husband. So she went to him on purpose, I believe, to tell him she was coming, even though he already knew, but that she wanted her name to be Aramis. And so he came to me and he said, she's asking to be named Aramis. And I fell in love with the name. And so that's where her name comes from. And there's much more to the story than that, but I'm trying to keep it short. But when I first opened the Spiritual Metaphysical Center, when I first started it very small, at a small level in Rockville, kind of as a pilot program to test it out, we called it Divinely Guided Children. And the reason for that is because Divinely Guided has come through my sessions so many times, that the term Divinely Guided, which is also why I named the cartoon series that we created Divinely Guided Children, and one of my books is called Divinely Guided. So Divinely Guided Children was going to be the name of the Metaphysical Center. But as time went and it became more apparent it was going to be a little bit more than just a metaphysical center, simultaneously my daughter started going to preschool and things like that. And she started telling me from a young age, like 2 years old, Mommy, I'm going to be a teacher one day. I'm going to be a teacher one day. And she became obsessed with it, to the extent that all she wanted for Christmas was to go to Michael's and pick out teacher supplies. And she turned her bedroom into a classroom, and she would pretend to teach a class. To this day, she's 8, she still does it. And her dream is to be a teacher. And so I put together on my own, with all of this kind of this synchronicities, that one day I realized, oh, this is what she was talking about. This is what we were going to create together. I need to change the name to honor her because this is her legacy. So I changed the name to Aramis, and I don't like the word education. We're changing a lot of the words school. And so I tried to call it something different. So I went with center. And now, many times that I've communicated with her higher self since then, we kind of giggle because she's like, yeah, we were waiting for you to come up with that epiphany on your own. We didn't tell you on purpose because we were waiting for you to get there. And so I
Mm.
wonder if I took longer than I needed, but the point is that we got there. And that's why we call it after her.
I really love a lot of things that you said. It makes me, she was in communication with you, and this feels really important because a lot of people are always going, baby, just give me the answer, give me the way, give me that one thing. And I always speak about this. It's like you're I call it sovereign soul. You're coming into this world with your own experience, and you have to figure it out. It's like you have to listen, you have to cultivate. I'm sure you must hear that a lot with people. But I love like the way you were sharing, and I'm seeing the story being built, and to me it feels, I'm a feeler, so it feels like it doesn't have to be one thing. Like, okay, you came up with the name, but maybe whatever that timeline was had to come in its own space and way, and that it couldn't be forced. And I remember my son, he would call himself a name that I didn't like. And I'm like, this is your name. I don't like this name. I'm not naming you that. But he kept going on and on and on. And then I was like, okay, I let it go. And I named him Forrest because that's the name I liked. And I felt like he was okay with it, but I felt like he was just kind of like going along with it. And then this is what just totally shocked me. I was probably a year or two ago, I was going through an old journal and I was ripping up pages, and I'm like, I'm just flipping through, and I'm going, because I'm at a point in my life where I'm like, I need to get rid of a lot of materialistic things, like more and more. Like I'm getting very strong energy around that. Even when my birthday just came, I begged my friends not to buy me gifts. I go, give me experiences, like hug me, take me on a walk, bring me a flower, like feed me food. And it felt really strong. So I'm going through this journal, and I find this page, and I was so shocked. I was like, did I write that? And it says my spirit guide, and the name was Henry. I don't want to make anyone feel bad that like I don't like the name. I don't like that name Henry for my child. But he's going on and on in his spirit form. And then I saw that I was talking to a spirit guide named Henry for a long time. And then it made me go, wait a second, huh? And I go, and this was like 20 years before my kid is even born. And I'm like, was Forrest my spirit guide? What, like, I can't really make sense of it, but I thought it fascinated me. I had no idea that I forgot that I had that guide many years ago, like really before and I never thought Forrest was going to be born. And like you said about the soul connection, I felt like when Forrest was born, I felt like he was so bright and sparkly and such a different frequency. I was like, I wasn't sure what are we doing together? Like I wasn't, I almost felt like the love he had was like, I almost couldn't hold it. And it sounds really sad to say that, but I think it's because of the way I was raised and how I came into this world. And there were so many things that he's showing me, this pristine, I don't know. And so then I was like, oh my goodness, like again, I just have to leave it up to a sense of mystery. But again, you just kind of validating it that, babies have a name and then it changes, or we have to just listen, and then either the connection comes or doesn't. And so, but there's so many I have so many questions just about, I love this, New Earth children, and I saw on your website you had these really beautiful classes for children and a lot with animals, which I thought was really awesome. And then now I hear your animal background. I'm like, that makes sense. And
Yes.
and then you said I love that you're international, you're going around, and of course I'm like, come to California, LA, and I really when I went to your fundraiser, I was like, gosh, I really feel like there should be one in California, which I think would do amazingly well, especially now after the pandemic. There's the homeschool community is so huge over
Mhm.
here, and people want they want something else expanded beyond just like, okay, math, science, like what about, the children's, like you were saying, like really like nourishing like who they are and what
Yes.
they can bring forward.
Yes, absolutely. I put a survey out on my website and in various other places a few years back. And I asked because I started to acquire a pretty large following of parents that were kind of, seeing what I was doing and how Aramis was progressing. And I decided to put a survey out because we were really considering where we were going to have the first mega center, or at least one of the first big centers, large centers outside of Rockville at the time. Because again, that's where I had planned to open the first. And both international and national, surveys. So within the United States, Florida was by far the first, the
Mm.
number one rather of people that said they wanted it here. Then number two is Texas, and actually Texas and California were tied. Then there was Oregon and Washington, and various other states after that, and Colorado. And so my plan was to start in Rockville, go to Florida, go to Texas, and then make my way over to California. Now, I'm from California originally, so people ask, like, why didn't you go there first? It's a good excuse to go back home. But
Mm.
I really felt like I intuitively needed to go energetically where it was appropriate right now, not for me, but for the world and where this is needed. And I was really, truly guided to Florida. And so California is at the top of the list, though. It's top five, not only because I want to go there as well, but because I actually do have a good network of people
Yeah.
in California that I know want this. And I'm actually working with some of them to look at land in like Coachella area, where there's lots of horses. And so that is in the works. That is definitely.
Awesome. Yeah, I love this international kind of start with the United States, expand outward, and I love that, you share even it's like it just kind of come together and that not without trial and error, of course. Like you had that vision in Maryland and then of course, like you said, 2020, it changed a lot. I would say it changed everybody, right? I mean, it changed everybody. But I want to hear more about, so when children are coming through into the center, what is the experience that some of them have or share, or what can you say more about their learnings, teachings?
Well, first, let me talk about the philosophy and kind of what we're about first, and then I can share that. The premise of Aramis, we just shorten it and we say Aramis philosophy, Aramis stages of learning. So we've kind of abbreviated everything, but our true philosophy is that children do come first because in my research, but also my own personal experience with my own children and the collective experience that I've had with my own clients, hundreds and hundreds of them with children all over the world, it's apparent that the education system is a disservice to our children, and they don't prioritize our children. In fact, it's really more about money. These schools are actually a business run by the government to funnel money back and forth for the purpose of statistics and testing to compete with one another so that they can bring these children, indoctrinate children, and put them into the college system, which I have my own personal views about. And then they funnel them in as adults and put them in this paradigm of work, 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 stress, 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 and no life, no joy. They're all controlled. And so in my vision, and what I'm seeing is that New Earth children are quite different. They're unique. They have a new outlook or a different outlook, a higher vibrational outlook on life and just about everything. And I believe that they're coming into this planet not only to help us recognize that, but to help us break through these boundaries of programming, to recognize who we are and how to heal ourselves. And through that, I believe the collective will evolve as a result of their guidance, not just them solely, but they are a huge catalyst of this ascension that we're going through. They're coming in and bringing their enlightenment. Many of them are evolved souls coming in to to our families to help. And so we need to shift the education system to serve them better, because what that will do is it will shift the future generations and how we look at education, how we treat our children, how we respect our children. So our platform is Children Come First. And what that really means is that they have the ability to go into a center. Let's talk about the physical center, and what we're manifesting is an opportunity, much like a university schedule, but not university mentality, where there are a plethora of classes, esoteric and core style curriculum, and arts, and all sorts of animal communication or classes with animals out in our fields, and everything in between. And these children get to choose what they want to take. They get to choose what it is that they are connecting with. And that could change week to week. And it's an experience that the parents and the children need to connect with each other, to work together, to ensure that the child has the best experience. So it's a lot more involvement with the parents. And I think that that's what we're lacking in this society is parents drop their children off at school and have no say. And they should. We should know what our children are learning, and we should have say in what they learn. Because look what situation we're in right now with the things that we're finding out that they're learning in school, and we're like, what? And so we need to be more involved. So children, it's an opportunity for holistic learning where children get to choose what it is that they want to learn. There is no curriculum because we are building the curriculum as we go, and it changes. It's ever evolving based on demographics, ages, etc. And so if we could create an opportunity where families can come into these centers that will be free, because I'm working through humanity, I want to create a humanitarian funded opportunity, like a nonprofit, but nonprofit of the future, I believe, where we're going, where we shift out of the monetary system, and children can just come and be in a safe environment. And if they're right brain thinkers, like you and I talked about before we got on the camera here, or we started recording, we have a lot of parallels. I literally thought I was stupid for most of my life because I didn't do well in school. And I was actually told by several teachers throughout my youth that I was dumb, and maybe I had mental disabilities that I needed to get help with, because I couldn't do math and I couldn't retain a lot of the information. Yet when I was doing creative writing classes, I was getting the top grades in the class, and other creative type of activities, because I'm very right brain and my left brain doesn't work very well. And I have a really hard time with critical cognitive thinking and analytical thinking. And, and so we need to recognize that children have their strengths, and then sometimes they have their weaknesses, that instead of pointing them out and making them feel bad about it and segregating them from the other children, those children should be given the opportunity to go into other classes that they will thrive. And I'm not saying that they don't have to do math, but instead of putting them in a very comprehensive math class, we have a variety of math classes where maybe we do spiritual science or mindfulness math, where they learn to cook. And through cooking, they're learning to measure, and they're learning to understand the whys they're doing math. Because that was my biggest issue. It is being lectured and told to memorize, and I didn't get it. But when I was out in the real world with my mom at the grocery store, and we were looking at how much things cost and how much money we had, I would understand math a lot more. And I think these children need to be given that extra attention so that they really understand what they're learning and the whys behind it. And then they will really enjoy going to school, that they are doing project-based learning, where they are getting the math, the science, the history, and all sorts of things in one project that is maybe spanned over a week or maybe even 6 weeks. They are going to have so much more fun because they can and relate to what they're learning, as opposed to being told to sit down and listen for, hours on end during the day. We also need to cater to their learning styles. So we have mentors that have the ability to recognize the differences in children as beautiful gifts, and work with them to cater to that and to blossom that part of themselves, because there's nothing wrong with being more right brain. There's also nothing wrong with being more left brain. I have a lot of clients where their children are more left brain and they do really well and they excel in math, but they happen to really dislike art and they refuse to do it and they don't like it. There's nothing wrong with any of that. It's just what the children are, what they gravitate to based on their consciousness and what they connect with. So we're trying to create an environment where we get to explore, we get to have fun. There are no grades, there are no tests, there's no hierarchies, there's developmental stages. We group children of different ages together because I believe it's very important that children learn from other children of different varying ages, and really to put them around animals, because animals will help us ground and connect to the earth. And so we'll have horses, and we have a therapy dog we're training right now that will be on at least the first campus and will be free roaming, so that children have a therapy dog at all times. If children want to read out in the field with the horses or paint outside with the cows and the chickens, that they can do that. They don't have to be stuck indoors all the time. So the grand vision is a beautiful, harmonic, I think, ever evolving manifestation that also includes their mental and their wellness, their health and wellness. And so we'll have a whole equally as large unit where children can go and lay on biomats. They can receive energy sessions from Reiki practitioners, go in Himalayan salt rooms and just meditate. They could color in there if they want to. They can receive biofeedback sessions. They can do sound therapy as part of their health and wellness. And maybe they learn Reiki while they're in there. So the opportunities are truly infinite. And so where we are right now, because we don't have that physical center just yet, is we are trying to cater to children through the virtual outlet, which personally, and I think many people listening will agree, we're kind of getting a little bit done with all of that. And I think it's really hard to keep children engaged through a virtual platform. But with the interest of trying to be more inclusive, we are still moving forward as much as possible, because even if I open the first center tomorrow in Florida, we will still keep the virtual program going indefinitely, because we still want to reach children all over the world. And we're trying our best to reach them in a way that is uplifting and engaging, so that they really enjoy wanting to come back. And so right now, I believe that majority of the children that take our classes are anywhere from 5 to, low 20s, early 20s. And then we also have a whole slew of adult classes. So we have the young adults and then the parents taking classes. And the feedback is anywhere from, I can't believe how much my child has changed. They're completely different. They're enjoying this so much. They are there's a sense of relief around them. They feel more confident. It's mostly I mean, if not all positive. I don't think I've actually heard anything negative yet. The only thing negative I've ever heard is, I wish the times were a little bit more convenient for that particular family, but it's hard to accommodate everybody. So that's where we are right now. And, I think every month we add different content, different classes, different mentors come and join the team from all over the world to give their worldly perspective. And I think it's just beautiful. As we watch it grow, it morphs into something I could have never imagined. And so I think the children really are embracing it, and they really enjoy it.
I love that it's becoming and morphing into its own thing, right? And a lot of things you said that feel so valuable, it made me kind of think about even I know it's called more of an alternative education, right? And I hate the word alternative. I just do, because I feel like, like alternative like I refuse to use the word alternative medicine, because I'm like, nature, how is that alternative? Nature is like, holistic nature-based medicines to me are like, that's main medicine. But I understand we're more collective energy and how we've evolved from, very dense places into still holding dense places for some reason, where people are wanting to evolve. And even for children, like I do know what I look at, and I have friends, their kids are in the public system and they're trying to make them maybe not so rigid or hard, but I said it's still that kind of 8 to 3, like nonstop. And there's no like, okay, kids, let's lay down and stretch. Let's listen to our energy. Let's listen to our bodies and our breath. And I find that a lot of children, people say, well, the kids get sick a lot in school. And I know everyone's like, well, they have germs and they share it, right? Which I get. But I'm also going, but they're stressed out. Like, so the stress of those experiences and the energy. And if they don't know their own body, their connection, that it's going to it's like Monday through Friday all the time. And I'm just like, wow, it feels so unfair to do that to children. But I know that, some people are okay with that, or they're not maybe aware, or they're just kind of going through the motion. Or of course, in America, we're all about working, right? And so the excuse is, well, I have to work as a parent, right? We always have a lot of really good excuses, and maybe they are pretty valid. But even going into like, I'm really big into self-care because I was that child, the shy introvert that was had trauma, so I was quite terrified of my world, but I felt so deeply. But there was no training for me. I got sick, and I had to deal with sickness and incurable, like every diagnosis from lupus to MS. Maybe it's rheumatoid arthritis. You could see a theme in the inflammation. And so then it was like, oh, okay. And I try to nurture that inner child with myself, but I have such a compassion and love because I can really see the energy of children. Like it's just as though I'm looking at your face. It's not like not something I have to work hard for. And I love that we're like nurturing children like this. And I'd say last year I had this feeling in my heart that came through, and I was told I'd be working more with older children. And I was like, like we said earlier, what does that mean? Like, what does that mean? I don't know what that means. And then in the past months, I've had children, um, just, I want to say random children or people that I kept running into, or I was messaged. And there was this one, I didn't actually get to fully meet with her son, but he had a lot, I guess she ended up sharing with me that he had connections to starships and things. And I says, well, I'm open to talk to him. And oh, this is how I got upon it. I ran into, and I don't publicly read people. But I was at the farmer's market, and this little boy came right next to me. He was in my energy field, and he was so empathic and so present. To me, it was obvious. Like, how does not anybody else know this? Like, it wasn't anything special. And then I just started talking about her son, and she was really happily surprised and welcoming of it. And then we reconnected at some other point. And then it was like, I don't know what kind of service I can provide for him. I know I could listen, and I understand that children have a lot of different abilities that I do feel like need to be nurtured. And I think I go back to me as having to figure it out on my own, really, and trying to call out mentoring, which I got a little bit of mentoring in my 20s based on a friend who was a healer, which was really guiding. And I know there's something, and I do get a lot of really sick children that they've been exhausted through medical care. And I said, okay, and I take on cases like that. And I said, okay, I'll do the best I can. Send them to me. I was like, a child shouldn't. And I know what it's like to be sick forever. And then I'm going, gosh, like, can you imagine being like 5 years old and just having sickness after sickness? And I'm like, that, like, it hits me deep in my heart to go, no, like, what could we do from an emotional, energetic, spiritual perspective? So it's not just, I don't want to like shit talk a diet and exercise, but when do we get to a point where that's not what have you done at all? It's like you've done it all. So then what's the next part? But yeah, if this really deepness in my heart for children who I would even say have supernatural abilities, and maybe they don't even know what to do with it, or and it's nice that you work with the parents because it's really about the parents. Like if accepting their child for whatever their ability is, and we're in such an overdiagnosed culture. It's like everybody has ADD and ADHD, and I'm like, is that's the case, like, or is that real? Like, what's happening? And not to say that it doesn't exist, but I'm like, every single person I meet, like every other person is like, I think I'm this, I think I'm that. And I'm like, well, and I'd like to bring it back to the nervous system. I go, we are so living in dysregulation, a lot of people. And ADD, ADHD really comes from a high level of dysregulation. So maybe we all are living in those spaces at times. But I said, but to like own it in a way, to me, yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's like, why can't we just diagnose you with supernatural abilities?
Well, I agree with that. And I think that's exactly where we're going. And that's what's happening. And I see it actually. And it's a lot about what I'm writing in my third book right now called Children and the Great Awakening is about the star seeds. But what I talk about is 3D interference. And I go and I give a really long list of examples of what they do in the 3D to suppress us, to lower our vibration, to cause dis-ease in the body. And I go through it extensively, and I talk about that. But one of my missions, and I go into this in the book as well, is to delabel children, to stop labeling them. I'm a
Mm.
big, anybody that follows me knows me very well for that, I believe. Because one of my missions is to get rid of the labels. I don't believe in them. And it's through my sessions with children that I discovered the true nature in which these children are labeled for, and they are spiritual gifts. And I go in depth and in many interviews where I talk about the spiritual side of ADHD and the spiritual side of Asperger's and the spectrum and dyslexia and multiple
Mm.
personality disorder, schizophrenia, bipolar. I mean, all of it. I go in detail, and I talk about that. One, it is 3D interference of all the things that I mentioned, which causes disease within our body, and it keeps us in a low vibration. And the other is that a lot of these high frequency starseed children come through the planet into these 3D bodies on purpose, because they are here to help us transition from 3D to 4D to 5D, which is why I use the word alternative education, because that's a 3D term that we need to give the newly awakened parents so they understand that it is something different. But then as we get into 5D, for example, that word will no longer exist. But we have to try to help people navigate slowly into these different phases. And I believe that we are going through a phase right now where we are recognizing as a collective that the labels are part of the dark, kind of the dark culture, the dark side, to put categorically place our children in these boxes of different abilities that are a bad thing, so that it segregates them from the rest of the children. It puts a feeling of lack, or lowers their self-confidence, and it causes a stigma. And it's really detrimental, especially when these children are in a young, vulnerable age, when they're developing and learning who they are and their own superpowers. And it teaches them to disconnect from their intuition and not to follow it. So I'm a big advocate to remove the labels, and just recognizing that the children are actually spiritually gifted, and they come in with these gifts, and that's why they are labeled as such, as if it's a bad thing, when in reality they're here to bring that part of the hyperactivity, for example, out in humanity, to recognize that children don't need and shouldn't be placed in a chair under fluorescent lighting for 8 hours a day, being lectured and being taught to memorize. They're not actually learning or retaining any of that information, which is why children go a whole summer and go back to school in the fall and they forgot everything, because they never
Mm.
actually learned anything. It's all about memorization. And so we have to rethink why these children aren't sitting still, because they are multidimensional. They have a lot of energy flowing within their body, and they think 10 times, 20 times, sometimes 100 times faster than we do. They're tapping into other dimensions, other realities, and they are bored with the school system because
Mm-hmm.
it's not serving them. And so these labels are just completely misguided, and we need to move away from using those. And so I think we are, though. I think that people are listening to
Yeah.
me, and I'm hearing lots of other parents talk about it. And I think that parents are starting to say, you know what? I know that my child could be labeled with X or Y or Z, but I'm not going to let the doctors
Yeah.
even have the attempt to place that label. They're not using them anymore. Parents are
That's
standing up.
yeah. It is about the parents stepping up, standing, being the advocate for our children. And I know more and more, even when it comes to infancy with the medical community, even, we have to be such a strong advocate to say yes or no, and that it's okay to say no, if even if the majority, or well, this is what I did, or it's like we have to go into deep questioning with a lot of stuff. And even when you kept saying something and it really rung in my head was about memorization, that's actually how I got through school. I memorized everything because I was such a strong picture thinker. But here's the thing. I memorized everything, but I didn't know anything. Like I couldn't explain or understand. And when I went to college, and I went to community college, and I got retested to look at my abilities, and I was told I had really poor auditory processing. I make up words and I fill in the blank. I was like, okay, but I was like, maybe you're all boring me and I don't have enough attention span to listen, because it's just jargon. It's just garbage to me. And I just had to go through it. And so when they looked at how I tested, they said I had over an achievement in memorization, like it was above average. So I was like, yeah, because I didn't realize I was clairvoyant always. I just thought it was normal to see everything in pictures, to walk around people and get images and pictures. I don't know. I didn't really claim it until my 20s. And
Mhm.
I was like, no, clairvoyant is someone else. I always thought it was that someone else. And then I realized, I'm like, oh, that's what it is. Okay. And I
Yeah.
see it, and even what you're saying about labels, I do feel like we are kind of breaking away more and more from labels. And I know, like, sometimes, like, my son, when the school system was like, he was dyslexic, fine. But like then we started changing the verbiage of that because it was like I use the word dyslexic minded because that's what the world sees us as. It doesn't make it true. We're not dyslexic. We're not like, oh, I have to wear that and that's a part of me. It's the way the world sees because how we perceive things and how we figure out things, how we create things is not the same as other people. And like everybody's different, but I have a child that's dyslexic minded and I have a child that's not. And how they view things and create things, and there's a bit of an age gap, but I think it's kind of fun with my older one who's more dyslexic minded. I know that I could give him a challenge that maybe someone else can't figure out. And I don't know, he sees something no one else sees. I'm like, that's pretty impressive. And then we see that in the school system as a deficit or a problem or something to cure. Where I'm going, there's 40% is what I've learned. 40% of people are dyslexic minded. Those are the innovative creator. These are the inventors. And so you go into the school system and we gotta improve you. We gotta fix you. And I literally the other day was talking to a teacher and I always use air quotes like, you gotta catch up. Oh
Yeah.
man. I just turned 48 and I still haven't caught up. So what does that mean? This pressure of catching up, having to be, and it's like, I get very passionate about that for families and people because I am the poster child for whatever that catch up means. I've never caught up. So now what? So what do you do with that? We
Yeah.
can't live, as you said, children are such all different creative, innovative thinkers and creators and where their special area is to be. It sounds like you and your our Aramis, it's like you nurture that, right? It's like you see that. So you're like, I see you. And I love that mentoring. I needed that mentoring. I'm going to go back in time and go to this school. This would be like the perfect school. And like we were
Hear that a
sharing
lot.
earlier, like we were saying, is like, yeah, I was told I shouldn't want, I was told in high school, I said, I want to be a doctor. And I was told by the resource lady, I had the special class, that I took. She said, you should be a model and model nurse clothes. And I was like, and I didn't have any strength or anything to be like, are you fucking kidding me? I want to be like a doctor, but you're literally telling me I'm not smart enough. I'm not, and that I should just be a model for nurse clothes. And she
That's
was so excited about it. And it was so disgusting to me, but I didn't speak out. I was just kind of like in shock, like, oh, and then I couldn't talk about my dream anymore because she was pretty much telling me it was not of value. And I hope that they're not doing that to kids anymore, but who knows?
yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if they were. I mean, I think there are very well-intentioned teachers out there that are doing a great job. I've met many of them. I know they exist. They write to me all the time. They call me. They say, I want to get involved. But unfortunately, a lot of them get into the system with this grand vision of helping children, and then they realize, oh wow, this is not the system isn't about helping the children at all.
Mm.
And they have these innovative ideas, but it's not welcomed within the education platform, and their ideas are put down and they're said, no, you have to follow this curriculum this way, nothing else. And I think they get very frustrated, they get burned out, and a lot of teachers did quit because I think what the pandemic did for them was help them recognize their value. I think everybody learned to some degree their value during the pandemic and what
Mm.
their time should be spent on and what it's been wasted on, and the value of family and health, self-preservation. And I think the teachers were like, hey, we're not valued, we're not listened to, we're not respected. And they just quit. I can't tell you how many clients I have that are retired teachers and retired nurses. We
Wow.
bring up nurses too, and they're in their 20s, they're in their 30s, some are in their 40s or 50s, but a lot of them are young and they're like, well, I got to find something else to do. And I said, listen, don't look at it that way. Your soul, as part of your journey, chose to come in between two worlds. You chose to come in during the 3D so you could see what isn't working, what you don't like, what's wrong with it. If you were complacent and you didn't mind, then you wouldn't be doing any service to humanity. But you came in to see and rock the boat a little bit, not because you're meant to make huge changes in that moment, but there's a ripple effect. There's a vibration that occurs as a result of their light being there and what they put out, the energy they put out. And I said, wait, and things are going to shift around. And then new education is going to come through, like Aramis and many others. And then in the healthcare field, I believe we're seeing a whole new platform of not alternative education, but just not alternative healing. I mean, but primary healing. I couldn't think of the word primary healing. And all of that's changing. And so those teachers and those nurses and those doctors that were in both stages, when they go into the 5D version of those things, that's where they'll thrive. That's where they're finally going to be able to do what they've always wanted to do. But they had to be part of the switch of humanity to help guide us forward. But there's this awkward in between where those that have quit are really resentful and angry right now because they're like, what a waste. And I'm like, no, there's no waste. Just wait. Your time is coming. I believe that strongly for just about everyone out there, whether they quit their job and they're not meant to be in that field at all anymore, and they're going to do something that they're truly passionate about later, or they were meant to be part of the breakdown of the paradigm, if only to be the architects or the innovators of the new one that's built. And so I think this is a really incredible period of time right now to be alive and be a part of all this.
I love that. That's perfect too. We're coming to our end. It's like you just said it all right there. But I want you to share just ways that people can contact you. Is it, whether it's email or Instagram or website, and then any upcoming things from this Mother's Day weekend or May into the summer?
Sure. Well, we have such a dynamic and incredible and versatile selection of classes always. And so I highly recommend everybody visit aramiscreativelearning.com, which is our website that has new classes every single month. So every month they change and the times change, the mentors change. And we do that on purpose because we want to really create a variety of content. But if you want to reach me, you can reach me through the contact page on aramiscreativelearning.com. I also offer energy sessions and soul readings to parents and adults. You can book those through aramiscreativelearning.com, but also my adult website, which is intuitivewellnesscenter.com. I do have a YouTube channel with content, with interviews and things that I put on there. It's under my name, Sherri Divband. And my Instagram is also under Sherri Divband. And so those are the primary ways to get a hold of us. If anyone watching this wants to donate, we are a nonprofit, the Aramis Collective, which helps to fund programs that we have, the running of the website, legal fees, but also the development of Divinely Guided Children series of books that we have, which are new ones about to come out in about a week, which is called Luna Meets Bigfoot. And then we also have the cartoon animation series. We have I think we're up to 18 episodes at this point, and that's on YouTube under Divinely Guided Children Media, and it helps to support those all those projects.
Thank you. I know I love all these books, these projects, the expansion, and how it continues to move. And I want to thank you so much for being here at Spirit Baby Radio.
I really enjoyed being on the podcast today. Thank you so much for having me.
And I want to thank everybody for joining episode 165, Grounding the Cosmic Heart for Supporting Our Children into the Future. Thank you for joining Spirit Baby Radio with your host, me, Kelly. And please join my newsletter for Spirit Baby 101 video on tips and practices. Order my book, It's a Journal, Sacred Communication, a Spirit Baby Journal, and Cards for Your Healing Journey, Spirit Baby Oracle Cards, Soul Answers from Spirit Baby. To learn more about my services in supporting people all around the world in private one-on-one sessions, online classes, programs, and private VIP retreats, You can reach me at kellyanmeehan.com or spiritbabymedium.com, as well as on Instagram at spiritbabymedium, and email is spiritbabymedium@gmail.com. Remember to always listen to your heart communication, and your spirit child says hello. Thank you for joining.